Tragedies of Nature, Episode 1, The Exodus, the Dyatlov Pass Incident, written by Kronos. In the far reaches of the earth, where frost bites through bone and silence stretches beyond the mind's reach, nature does not forgive. It watches, it waits, and sometimes it swallows. This is the story of 9 souls who stepped into the wilderness, young, brilliant, fearless, and never came back. What drove them into the night barefoot and broken? What horror chased them down the mountainside in absolute silence? And why, more than 60 years later, do we still have no answer? This is not fiction. This is not folklore. This is a true story, one written in ice, in blood, and in the chilling void between what we know and what we dare not believe. From Tragedies of Nature, this is The Exodus, the Dyatlov Pass Incident, narrated by Kronos, and once you enter this pass, you may never see the world the same again. In 1959, 9 young hikers disappeared without a trace in the northern Ural Mountains. They were experienced, disciplined, resilient. They set off on a journey across icy ridges and wind-scoured valleys, chasing a goal that many would never dare attempt. They never returned. When rescuers finally found their campsite, what they discovered sent ripples of unease through even the hardest minds of the Soviet Union. Their tent had been cut open from the inside. Left behind were boots, coats, food, all abandoned in a frozen panic. Barefoot footprints trailed into the snow. Some wandered into the forest, others to the edge of a ravine. There, half buried under 4 meters of snow, lay bodies, broken. 2 with crushed ribs, 1 with a shattered skull. Another was missing her eyes, her tongue, and yet no signs of a struggle. No external wounds, just silence and death. The cold alone could explain some of it, but not all. Not the violence, not the radiation on their clothes, not the terror etched into the final photographs they left behind. In the official reports, there was no conclusion. Only this, that a compelling natural force had caused their deaths. For decades, that single phrase became the seed of one of the most persistent mysteries of the 20th century. A mystery born not just of death, but of uncertainty, of evidence that didn't add up, of facts too strange to fit a single story. And for every answer offered, new questions emerged. Was it an avalanche? The slope was too shallow. Their footprints, still visible, would have been erased. So why would they cut their tent open from within instead of calmly unzipping it? Why would trained hikers, rational minds, engineers, radio operators abandon warmth, supplies, and safety? Some say it was the military, a weapons test gone wrong. There were reports of glowing orbs in the sky that night, debris found nearby, documents sealed for decades. A witness later claimed the bodies were unusually orange, as if exposed to radiation, and they were. Others whisper of things older than governments. A creature in the snow, something not human, something that left no tracks but induced terror so absolute it broke them from within. One theory is sound itself, a low-frequency hum generated by the mountain's unique shape, a natural phenomenon called infrasound, capable of inducing panic, hallucination, dread, a pressure in the brain. Could invisible waves in the air have caused madness? Another theory suggests secret parachute mines tested in the area that night, explosions strong enough to crush bone without leaving a trace on the skin. But then, why no burn marks? Why no damage to the tent? And yet the simplest questions remain the hardest to answer. Why did they run? Why didn't they return? And what exactly happened in the final minutes before everything they knew, everything they believed, was swallowed by the cold? The man who might have known never made the journey. His name was Yuri Yudin. He had fallen ill and turned back early. He would live to be an old man, but would carry the weight of 9 shadows on his shoulders for the rest of his life. He once said that had he gone with them, he would have died with them. Today, the place where they were found is known not by its original name, but by a new one, Dyatlov Pass, a memorial to fear, frozen in time. And still, the wind howls over the ridges. Still, the snow covers the truth. Still, the mountain remembers what we cannot explain. The Soviet Union never liked mysteries, especially not in 1959. But this was different. What began as a search and rescue mission quickly became something else entirely. A cover-up, a military embarrassment, or a secret too dangerous to reveal. Let's go back to the beginning, to the last confirmed day in the hiker's journal, February 1st, 1959. The group had set up camp not in the forested valley nearby, but on the exposed slope of Kholat Syakhl, the Mountain of the Dead. Why would seasoned hikers make that decision? Was it an error in navigation, or did they deliberately avoid the trees to escape something already there? Their final hours appeared calm. Tent assembly, dinner, smiles, but within hours all of that would shatter. Was it an avalanche? That's the official explanation reopened in 2019 by Russian authorities. And on the surface, it makes sense. The slope was steep. Snow could have collapsed their tent, but the evidence doesn't align. Their footprints were still visible, straight, measured, not the frantic scramble of people fleeing tons of snow. And crucially, there was no debris pattern consistent with an avalanche. Professor Johann Gaume from EPFL in Switzerland ran advanced snow simulations and claimed a rare type of slab avalanche could explain the injuries, massive internal trauma like a car crash without external wounds. But that still leaves questions. Why no damage to the tent structure itself? Why the radiation on some of the clothes? Radiation found on the clothes of hikers Rustem Slobodin and Yuri Krivonyshenko measured in excess of what would be expected in nature. Krivonyshenko, notably, had worked at Mayak, a secret nuclear facility and site of a catastrophic 1957 accident. Coincidence? Or were they carrying contaminated materials? Some believe they may have stumbled onto something they shouldn't have seen. A military test. A weapons demonstration. Was that why the Soviet government classified the files? Why the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, was suddenly silenced? In a rare interview years later, Ivanov said he had seen signs of fire in the sky. He believed UFOs were involved. A respected Soviet official, openly speaking of aliens. Too far-fetched? Perhaps, but he wasn't alone. Multiple witnesses in nearby villages reported glowing orange spheres in the sky on the night of the incident. These weren't drunken tales at the tavern. They were corroborated by Soviet missile operators and weather station personnel. Could these lights have been R-12 missile tests? Or something more otherworldly? And then there's the sound. Infrasound, low-frequency vibrations too deep for the human ear to register, can cause nausea, dread, and panic. Under the right conditions, wind passing over the curved topography of the mountains can create a natural infrasound generator. Was the tent, perched awkwardly on the saddle, hit by a wave of invisible terror? Was that what caused them to slash their way out in hysteria, fleeing into the woods with no plan, no shoes, and no hope? But even that doesn't explain the trauma, the missing eyes, the missing tongue. Which brings us to a darker theory, one that terrifies not because of what it imagines, but because of how little it requires. Mansi hunters, the indigenous people of the region, were initially suspected, but there were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of attack. The Mansi, in fact, helped with the search effort. So what else? Parachute mines. A declassified Soviet memo from the 1960s references testing of airdropped mines in the area around the time of the hikers' deaths. These mines explode above the ground, causing massive concussive damage without fire, perfectly capable of breaking bones and liquefying organs without leaving a mark. Is that what tore the group apart? Some of the bodies had signs of intense internal trauma, chest cavities crushed as if by a car crash, yet their skin remained intact, just like the mines would do. But the tent, why cut it from the inside? Why flee with no boots or coats? Why climb a tree, tearing their fingers raw as two of them had? Was it fear, confusion, or something they saw and couldn't comprehend? Even now, with every detail laid bare, the full picture never fits. There are too many corners, too many shadows, and the deeper you look, the colder it gets. Let us return to the facts, strip away the legends, and examine what remains. Evidence, data, logic. The hikers were found at varying distances from their tent in 3 separate locations. The first 2, frozen near the tree line, were lightly dressed, suggesting they fled in haste. Their hands were burned. A small fire had been lit beneath the tree. Nearby branches were broken high above the ground. Someone had climbed it. Was it to escape or to see what was coming? 3 more were found between the tent and the tree. Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, Slobodin, trying to return, perhaps. Slobodin had a fractured skull, but not fatal. The rest showed signs of hypothermia, exhaustion, fear. But the final 4 were different. Found months later under nearly 4 meters of snow in a ravine, these bodies told a darker story. Dubinina's ribs were crushed, Zolotaryov's chest collapsed, Thibolbrignol's skull was caved in, and yet their skin showed no external trauma, no bruising, no lacerations. These are injuries not caused by falling. They're consistent with high pressure shock, blast trauma. This isn't speculation. Dr. Boris Vozdany, the forensic examiner, noted the force required to inflict such damage would be equivalent to a car crash. But again, no skin damage, no external wounds, no blood. That fact alone rules out avalanche debris. Even slab avalanches leave evidence, abrasions, fractures, chaos. But the tent remained partially upright. The hikers' gear was undisturbed, their diaries, cameras, food untouched. The snow on the slope didn't move. So what did? Radiation found on some of the clothing, particularly Zolotaryov's and Krivonishenko's, was confirmed by Soviet investigators. The levels were elevated beyond normal environmental exposure. Krivonishenko, notably, had worked at a nuclear facility during a major contamination incident 2 years prior. Cross-contamination? Possibly. But why were those particular garments radioactive? And only those. Enter the theory of military involvement. In the winter of 1959, the Soviet Union was deep in weapons testing. The region surrounding Dyatlov Pass, then off-limits to civilians, was near known missile testing corridors. Declassified documents confirm parachute mines and R-12 missile trials were active in the Ural region at the time. Parachute mines detonate just above the ground. The concussive force can cause massive internal injuries, broken ribs, crushed skulls, without causing burns or lacerations. Soviet documentation from other blast injuries show a haunting similarity to those suffered by the hikers. And what of the orange lights seen in the sky? Multiple eyewitnesses from nearby towns, Ivdel, Vishay, even Soviet weather personnel, reported strange glowing orbs the night the hikers died. Not all reports were made public. Some were seized. Others only surfaced years later. Even lead investigator Lev Ivanov, under immense political pressure, admitted before his death that he was ordered to keep certain theories out of the final report. He believed a non-human phenomenon may have occurred. So what do we have? Fatal injuries without external trauma, radioactive clothing, government secrecy, witness reports of aerial lights, a cover-up that begins the moment bodies are found. All of it points to something more than just snow and bad luck. Something beyond a simple natural event. But is that enough? Is it proof? No, but it's a constellation of data pointing towards something calculated or catastrophic. And still, one truth remains. Whatever happened in that frozen place on that nameless slope of Kalatsiakal, it tore through 9 lives in a way no theory has ever fully contained. Something caused them to flee, to run without boots, without reason. Something that made death in all its forms, freezing, crushing, bleeding out, seem preferable to staying one moment longer. As we approach the final steps of their journey, we must ask, what is more terrifying? That there's a rational answer the Soviet Union buried for decades, or that there isn't one? The evidence points in every direction, yet none lead to the truth. The facts are cold, unyielding, each one a piece of the puzzle, but never the complete picture. An avalanche? No, too many inconsistencies. The bodies tell a story of violence, but there's no snowstorm that could account for such precise internal trauma. A military test gone wrong? Perhaps. The secretive nature of the region, the reports of unusual lights in the sky, the radiation on their clothes, these could all point to something clandestine. But if so, why the cover-up? Why erase the truth? Why silence the men tasked with investigating? What were they hiding? What was so dangerous that it had to be buried in ice and silence? And then there are the theories that touch the edge of reason, theories that may be harder to believe but equally impossible to dismiss. The whispers of something unnatural, a force in the snow that broke their minds before it shattered their bodies. Could an infrasound wave, invisible and insidious, have driven them to madness, to rip their way out of the tent in a frenzy, to flee the warmth and shelter in a panic they couldn't explain? Or was there something in the woods? Something that remained hidden even in the hours before their deaths? Something they saw that we cannot begin to understand. Something so terrifying, so alien, that it fractured their minds and sent them running barefoot into the cold to face the unknowable. We may never know. Some mysteries are too vast to be solved. Some tragedies are too deep for the human mind to comprehend. And yet, as we look back at those final moments, at the images of their abandoned tent, the boots left behind in the snow, the footprints that lead into the dark, one thing becomes clear. This was not just an accident. This was not simply a series of poor decisions or a random act of nature. This was a confrontation with something far beyond human understanding, a clash between mankind's need to explore, to push the limits of survival, and the cold, indifferent power of nature, or perhaps something else entirely. The Dyatlov Pass incident stands as a monument to our fragility in the face of the unknown, to the danger of pushing too far, too fast into territories where the rules of nature are bent, where logic, reason, and even sanity can slip away without warning. And still, the mountain remains, silent, cold, waiting. As the wind howls across Kalatsiakal, we are reminded that some truths are buried in the snow, and perhaps for the sake of our sanity, they must remain there. The Dyatlov Pass incident is not just a mystery, it is a warning, a reminder that not all questions should be asked, not all paths should be walked, and not all answers should be found. And as we leave this frozen landscape behind, we know one thing for certain. Some stories are not meant to be solved.